Welcome back to ATL Day Ones. I'm Tenitra. That is Jarvis. And you guys are the crew that keeps rocking with us and getting us those 5-star reviews. So keep them coming wherever you download your podcasts, and also keep getting the subscriptions coming our way on Locked On Sports Atlanta. We're closing in on 4,000 subscribers, and we
Yes.
appreciate that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just thank you so much. You know what
Hmm.
else we appreciate? The fact that when we look at what Tuesday was about, cutting the roster down to 53-man rosters, it makes you feel like you're one step closer to the beginning of the regular season. But it's also interesting because in some ways you're excited because, hey, you thought that that guy was going to make the cut and he made it. And then in other ways, you're kind of scratching your head and you're kind of shocked because you thought that guy was going to make the cut and he didn't. So, Jarvis, with that in mind, any surprises with who actually made the cut for the Falcons?
You know what? I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, Anthony Ferguson and him getting cut, and I think that the reason, but a lot of people didn't saying why he got cut, right? Like the reason why he got cut was because Felipe Franks made the roster as a tight end, and I'm sitting up here like, okay, just looking at going back over the preseason, I know we saw some good things from him in training camp. You know, we were up there at practice. You know, he was looking good in 1-on-ones and all that stuff, and making
Yeah,
some
yeah.
nice catches and looked like he was kind of starting to settle in on that piece. But he's
Mhm.
still he's a project. He's a
Yeah,
project guy, and I think that when I saw the 53, and I was just like, wait a minute, they're
yeah.
gonna carry four tight ends, and Felipe Franks is the fourth. Like, so
Right.
that was one thing that kind of just really just jumped out at me initially
Mhm.
when I start going through the roster, and I think that was something that I think it speaks to what Felipe Franks has shown them in practice, and that's very interesting. And I guess that, maybe that emergency quarterback type
Yeah.
situation,
Yep.
God forbid, Mariota and Desmond Ritter get hurt in the game. And like, oh, we at least have a quarterback.
Right.
So I think,
Right.
and if that happens to you, yeah, you can go ahead and
Mhm.
hang it up for the rest of the game, because that's a situation I'm sure Arthur Smith, he likes being prepared for, but he definitely don't want to have to pull the trigger on that one.
Indeed. And I would agree with that as a little bit of a head scratcher. But since you already went the Anthony Ferguson route, I will go the route of Caleb Huntley.
Mm,
Initially, the same reaction that you had when I first took a look, I said, oh, wow, didn't expect that. But then when I looked down the depth chart of the running backs that the Falcons did retain, and you
they
look
look
at a
deep.
Cordero Patterson, you look at Avery Williams, you look at Damian Williams and Tyler Algier, and there really was no place because you're
Right.
always going to keep CP. And Damian Williams is proven, and
He's a
he
veteran. Yep.
exactly. He's the veteran that at least showed you had some solid outings and solid showings during off season as well as during training camp. And of course, you're going to keep Avery Williams because he's kind of the best of both worlds. You can get him to be a running back, but you need him on special teams. And
Teams,
Tyler
yes.
Algier definitely showed you so far that it was a good look that you drafted him. So initially, yes, was a little bit shocked that Huntley did not make the cut, but then when I looked deeper down that depth chart, I said I absolutely see why and can agree with the move that Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot made. Now, that said, let's go to the flip side. Any surprises for you about who wasn't cut?
Wow. That's a good one. I mean, to be honest with you, when you
Mhm.
look up and down this, I
Yep,
started
kind
kind
of
of
looking down the roster, right?
right. I started looking up and down the roster, and I was like, okay, Eric Harris. Like, I know he's on the squad, but like, what did he do? Like, he wasn't no guy. I was like, oh yeah, Eric Harris out there really looking like a savvy veteran. It's like, didn't you
Yeah,
really just kind of see him? And then, I think about the guy, like, okay, a lot of times when people say, oh, I'm surprised this guy made his roster, but they don't
yeah.
necessarily have, okay, well, who should have made it? And I think that a guy that really flashed was Tease Tabor. I think
Hmm.
he was a guy that was out there throwing his weight around and
Hmm.
making some nice hits in the preseason, and making
Yeah.
some nice, he just making some good open field tackles, and he just looked like
Hmm.
a solid young veteran that you can probably want to keep around. But obviously the Falcons didn't think that, they thought that Eric Harris would probably be better suited for what they need, and I think
Right.
that was something I was kind of like, okay, all right, keep him around for another year. He's a
Hmm.
veteran guy, so, but we know the injury history from last year, and then you
Sure.
never know. Tease Tabor may be a guy that they might try to bring back.
Hmm.
Given any injury in the back end on the defense.
Indeed, indeed. So I want to talk to you as well about some thoughts, and this is kind of a wish list of yours, if you will. But before we talk about your wish list for the final roster before week one, let's talk about this wish list that you always love to talk about. That's your wish
Yes.
list for Coffee AM.
coffeeam.com/locked on. That is the website that you need to go to. Now I'm about to tell you why you need to go to that website, because they have the most amazing coffee that you're ever going to taste. This is the best small batch coffee roaster in the entire country. I'm talking about this Sumatra black satin. You want to go to Kenya. You want to go to taste the Peabody coffee. And, yes, that's the actual name of it. It's part of the name. I can't remember the rest of it, but yes, Peabody. The coffee is absolutely amazing because I get up early in the morning. I get my day started. And when I'm dragging and feeling a little groggy, I was even yawning while we were recording this show. I was just like, oh my God, I need to pick me up. The
Right.
first thing I'm
There
going
it
to once we get done, I'm going upstairs and go get my coffee AM because
is.
it is the best small batch coffee roaster in the entire country. It's no reason for you not to go there. Now that I've told you why, now I'm about to tell you why once you get there, they're going to be doing something very special for you. Listen up. Here we go. coffeeam.com/locked on. Go into the coupon code box. Drop in locked on, and you're going to get 15% off your first purchase on all gift sets, coffees, and teas. They got tea as well. If you're not into coffee, T going to tell you about the tea. She loves it, absolutely loves it. And yesterday, she had a little scratchy throat, and she tells you about that yesterday. So yeah, go ahead and get that tea. It works for all things, all of the above. Whatever you need it for is going to work for you. I'm guaranteed that right now. And just to let you know, go and drop in that coupon code box, locked on. Go to coffeeam.com/locked on. You're going to get 15% out. Go there right after the show.
Yes, right after the show. But stick around right now because we know that you guys probably have some thoughts as well. And listen, keep dropping your comments and we love to get your feedback on your thoughts as well because I'm sure you guys have reaction about that 53-man roster. We're going to continue to talk about the players who are retained on that roster leading up to week one against the Saints. So, Jarvis, I was thinking as well, we, of course, have been covering this team for the last few years. And of course, we were able to see players in the offseason during OTAs as well as training camp. And there were some players that we may have seen where we were like, you know what? Dang, sorry that guy got cut, but man, wouldn't mind seeing him back on the roster at some point, whether that's the roster outright or the practice squad. So, is there a player? I'll give you actually two. Is there a player who you want to see return to this roster? And is there a player who you think will return to the roster?
You know what? To be honest with you, I was really impressed by the New York Jets defensive line, like all the
Mm.
way from beginning to end. Because some of those
Mhm.
guys, some of the starters didn't necessarily play, but there were
Yes.
some guys there on the reserves that I really like how they just get off the ball, and I'm
Mhm.
sure that some of those guys didn't necessarily make that 53. I would not be surprised if the Falcons made that phone call and called
Yeah.
those guys as agent because that's the whole point of whole point of scouting, right? You save
Mhm.
time by going to try to watch some film on them. Hey, you played against them,
Right.
so you understand exactly what he brings to the table, what that person brings to the table. So I think that I'm always thinking about defensive line. Anybody who can touch the quarterback, that's on my wish list. Always, like you can't have enough pass rushers, T.
Yeah.
And I think that for as far as coming back, like I mentioned, if you have an injury in the back, injury on the back end of the defense, and Tease Tabor,
Mhm.
I wouldn't mind seeing him come back. And, another guy that I feel like they said he'll be a prime candidate for the practice squad is Derek Tangelo. I think
Mhm.
Derek Tangelo is a
Yeah.
prime candidate for that final 53 at some point during this season, especially if they have some type of injury. And Nick Thurman as well. Both of those
Yeah.
guys, look,
You
you
took
see,
my guy
you see a
there.
trend here. You see a
Co-signing.
trend here,
Yeah.
T. A wish list with defensive linemen and people you bring back defensive linemen. So yeah, everybody know where I stand on this show.
I agree. That's actually who I was gonna pick. I was or two, Nick Thurman and Derek Tangelo. So I'm gonna leave it right there. But I would also say you made a great point about the fact that the Falcons had the good fortune of being able to do joint practices with both the Jaguars
Yes.
as well as the Jets, and it allowed the opportunity. And then, of course, that's in addition to the 3 preseason games. So you even had just a sneak peek at the Lions, if you will. That
Mm-hmm.
gave Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith what maybe they needed to see. And there might be some player that we can get. And the fact that they are number 8 on the waiver wire list puts them in that top space of being able to say, hey, go after their guy outright, or being having first dibs, if you will. And granted, you might have some up and down on that waiver wire list, just in terms
Of
of
course.
maybe not always getting your first pick, but being 8th on the waiver wire list could also play in the Falcons' favor as far as who they can get. Now, a final question for you before we wrap up, and that is this: when you look at the roster, and we know shifts and movements can take place between now and September 11th, but as it's constructed today, are these Falcons equipped to compete the way that they say they want to?
I don't think so. That's why, I listen to Coach Smith because, even though from time to time he'll fall into the cliche head coach speak, but he says what he means and he means what he says. When a head coach says this 53 is fluid, it can
Yes.
look differently on Wednesday, on before the game, or even on the Thursday before the game, for
Mhm.
September 11th. And he's not talking about this week; he's talking about next week.
Yep.
So, though when you think of when a coach says something like that, I wholeheartedly believe that they are combing the waiver wires and they're making those phone calls to agents and trying to figure out how they can get better. And I absolutely love that because at the end of the day, you don't want players saying, "Hey, I made the 53. Now I'm good." Though you don't want that. You want those guys to continue to go out there and try to compete just like they did to earn that roster spot. But I think even if they do, you still got to go out there and kind of comb that waiver wire and see what's going on because you never want to turn out a chance to get better.
That you never want to turn down a chance to improve. And the reality of it is, and again, don't want to pick on him, but staying in that theme of D lineman, you look at Marlon Davidson, and the reality is that is potentially someone who's going to go on the IR, who's effectively going to have that
At
opening
some point,
at some point.
at some point he gonna get hurt.
That's kind of inevitable.
Yeah,
So you kind of
yeah.
know that when he talks about fluidity on the roster, that's probably one of the spaces and places that he's talking about. But speaking of fluidity, life takes us all over the place. It is fluid, and we never know how it's going to hit us from day to day. Man, it's a lesson, a cautionary tale about making judgments on somebody and also looking to be able to cheer somebody on for the bounce back. We'll talk about it in For the Culture.